Last time on A Soldier's Life, Eric met three random women in the woods that he now pays the herbalist ladies to teach and house. But big shit is going down. Eric's secrets get out. He has to confirm that it has a healing spell form. And Lorene is a snitch bitch. She has told Veronica's brother that Eric has a dreamscape amulet. So now he wants to duel Eric for it. So everyone knows about it. Eric accepts the duel and wins. And as a reward, he gets his own enchanted blade. Chapter 126. Choosing Sides. I was seated across from Castile, a worn, dark oak table between us. 2 gold rings, a silver necklace, and some folded papers were on the table. She studied me until I started to get uncomfortable. Castile broke the silence. Can I see the amulet again? I did not hesitate and placed the amulet on the table. Castile picked it up and turned it in her hands. I was watching her eyes to see if she used it. She eventually put it down, never having tested it. I never heard them called the Dreamscape amulets before. There were 2 of these at the Mage College, usable only by the first citizens and under the supervision of a high mage. They could help you learn new spells in weeks instead of months. Castile made strong eye contact. How did Boris know you had this? I winced. It was Lorene, the servant assigned to me. She caught me using it and figured out what it was. She promised not to tell anyone. Yeah, and that went well. Castile's eyebrows raised in a mocking visage. I will talk with the Duchess. I am sure Lorene will be suitably punished for not informing her before her brother. That made me feel slightly better. Me too. She deserves some type of punishment. But still, she had betrayed me, and the secret getting out was making my life much more difficult. She pushed it back toward me, like pushing away a temptation. Secure it. Duchess Veronica is not letting her brother do any message sendings, but we are certain he will plan to obtain it or use its existence to gain favor from another powerful first citizen. I felt like this amulet was about to become an albatross. I took the amulet and stored it. Castile did not ask to use it, but her body language hinted that she wanted to. Castile indicated the items on the table. These are the artifacts found on Sebastian. Behind Castile, Sebastian's collector was also on the bed. The maps and instructions from the summoner are in Elvish. She indicated the papers. I winced again, realizing I had not searched his body thoroughly. I directed my attention to the table. The rings did not have any runic markings, and on them that I could see. Are they magical? I do not see any markings on the rings. The silver necklace clearly had a unique pattern in the links. Castile frowned. Dungeon rings are typically just silver, gold, or platinum bands. Only when they are in use or heated in a flame or with a thermal stone will their runic script appear. Oh damn, okay, Lord of the Rings. She picked up one of the rings. I do not know their function, but yes, they are dungeon artifacts. After studying the ring, she put it down. After we leave for the ruins of Kaelora, the Duchess will compose a message sending to the capital. If Sebastian has an heir, they will go to him or her. If he does not have an heir, I doubt it, the Imperial Registry of Artifacts will be consulted. If any of the items are listed there, they will be turned over to the Emperor. Castile turned... Wait, no, I don't doubt it. He seems like a guy that would just fuck around and not give a fuck about the child. Because I was like, as if he has a family, you know? But then I was like, well, he could have gotten children anyway without having a family. So I take back my doubts. Castile turned around to look at the essence collector. Almost all essence collectors are registered in the Empire, so I will hold on to that until they request it to be returned. She let a small smirk escape. Of course, once we march with it, we will have no means of communication, as I do not know the message-sending spell. I figured out their plan. Castile and the Duchess had plotted so she would be able to keep the essence collector for this one assignment. I asked, And the rings and necklace? I will try to figure out their function tonight. They will remain with the Duchess, though. Most likely, Duke Octavian will come looking for them, she said with spite. I do not understand. Duke Octavian? I asked, bewildered. Castile clenched her teeth. Flavius informed me Master Mage Sebastian's estate isn't Duke Octavian's province. If he has no heir, and Flavius thinks he does not, then all his property will revert to Octavian. Why not just not report the recovery of the items and keep them? I offered a simple solution. If the items are not registered, that could work. But I do not know what is and what is not. The collector is definitely registered, but these, Castile looked at the rings and necklace. If we did not try to get them to their proper place, a truth seeker would discover the deception eventually, and the penalty is death. Oh. Castile straightened, and her tone turned serious. We have avoided why I asked you here long enough. Constantine and Flavius are both suspicious of you. The wyvern had no wounds, and no poison works that fast. With her tone change, I got uncomfortable. What happened to, if you do not know, you cannot tell the truth seeker? What? Huh? What happened to, if you do not know, you cannot tell the truth seekers? I said slowly. Oh, what happened to, if you do not know, you cannot tell the truth seekers? I said slowly. Castile pursed her lips and frowned. She was more direct. I am not asking you anything. I am telling you, Constantine and Flavius will be watching you more closely. If Constantine watched me any closer, his head would be stuck in my ass, I joked. That got a small smile from Castile. Her smile faded. Constantine knows you can heal. I expect any future training sessions are going to be more intense, Castile said. I groaned, as that had been one of my bigger fears. Do you know Constantine's spell forms? Castile abruptly asked. He knows your secrets. It is only fair you know his, she stated, smirking openly. He has a form of telekinesis. He can move small objects, I answered, and Castile nodded. When I did not offer any more, she supplied them. He can tell if something is poisonous. Oh! No way. My blood suddenly chilled, and Castile smirked at my discomfort. What? Only poisons that come from plants, though. Oh. It is a weak spell form from the nature affinity. He has a third as well, another weak spell form that is actually quite useful. It gives him a full night's rest in 4 hours. Well, that we knew, but Eric didn't. That bastard. That is how he is always up before me. That is just cheating. I spat in disgust at the unfairness. Cheating? Castile asked, amused. You can heal yourself, create solid invisible discs, have a secret storage, and have an amulet that lets you train while sleeping. I think you have the advantage over Constantine. Castile did not even mention that I was working on a spell form for time. So you just wanted to warn me? I asked Castile. Castile rubbed her brow, trying to come up with a way to explain it. Yes and no. Also, the amulet complicates things. Constantine will soon hear from the others that you have it, and he will tell his Praetorian Guard master. Boris will continue to pursue it. It is going to draw a lot of attention to myself and the company. I was confused. I could not believe such a small device could cause so many problems. Then what do you want me to do? Give it away? Flee the Empire? I said the latter in jest, but the thought crossed my mind often. Castile's eyes danced with indecision. No, it is not yet time we do that. A cold feeling ran down my spine. Castile had just confirmed some of my suspicions. Yeah, she had clearly used the word we. She had been grooming me to help her flee the Empire. At least, that is what I was interpreting from her words. It had been intentional on her part as I read her eyes. I waited for her to continue. You could always sell the amulet or seek protection from a first citizen. The Duchess? I asked, trying to read her intentions. Castile was impassive as she answered sadly. If you wish to enter her service, then you could. I know a few men of the company who would take her up on her offer. She did not sound bitter, though. I also suspect that the Duchess is already working with Constantine's Praetorian master. What? Constantine is working for the Duchess? I asked. I was baffled. Castile deliberated in silence, deciding what to tell me. No, it is not that simple. I think Antonia Segredo is using the Duchess to keep me safe. Antonia Segredo? The merchant queen you thought is Constantine's handler? I asked. Handler. Interesting way of putting it, Eric. But yes, while Firth is here to ensure I do not betray the Empire, Constantine appears to be here to ensure I do not get myself killed. She has some purpose for me, and I do not know what it is, Castile disclosed. Is that why he pushed us so hard to get to the capital for the tribunal? I asked. Partly so, I believe. He also has some loyalty and sense of justice in him, Castile said softly, as her thoughts wandered briefly. Too many things were playing through my mind. Castile was a peasant raised to power and caught in the politics of the empire. She obviously was hoping to escape one way or another. Constantine had been a mentor, a tough mentor, but still a mentor. But his true motives were hidden. Castile let me consider everything for a few minutes. I finally chose to side with Castile. What do you need me to do? Castile's lips twitched in a brief smile. Stay close to Constantine. Ask him for help in protecting your amulet. Castile let her words sink in before adding, if you can get him to divulge what Antonia Segredo has planned for me, it would help enormously. So this is what it had come down to. I was to spy on Constantine. Constantine keeps hinting that I should join the Hounds, I said after considering her words. Castile wavered a moment before admitting, he did mention it to me. He thought it would be beneficial for you, in case you had cause to flee the Empire. That is, knowing how your pursuers would work to track you. It was like lightning striking. Constantine thinks I'm going to flee. Castile laughed softly. I think he is more surprised you were still here. He has tracked more than a few legionnaires in his time, and the first day you arrived, he warned me you had all the signs of a runner. I thought on it for a moment. So I should ask Constantine about working for Antonia. Before, she may have seen you as useful as a smuggler, but now you are actually a competent soldier with self-healing and a secret storage space. Castile paused, maybe realizing how attractive I was to recruit. I committed to Castile's side, not seeing many options. Yeah, I understand and will try to gain Constantine's confidence. Castile nodded but did not smile. If you need help in the future, you can trust Adrian, Felix, Matteo, and Blaise. I tilted my head before figuring out what Castile was hinting at. If I decided to leave the Empire, as she was planning, then those four would be trustworthy. Matteo, really? I asked about the legionnaire who did not know how to hold his tongue. I was also surprised Delmar was not among the names mentioned. Castile nodded. Foolish with his tongue, but I bet Castile knows, but loyal and brave beyond measure. Ask him about his family sometime. It is a fascinating tale. I stood. I should get some rest for tomorrow's march. Are you going to loan one of your new blades to Brutus? Castile asked as I made to leave. Before we reached the ruins, yes. I want to try them both before deciding which I will use and which I will loan to him. Castile nodded approvingly, and I left. I returned to the northwest tower to find Maeviath animatedly talking with Flavius and Constantine. Maeviath was retelling the competition and how I had won the day against the first citizen. Constantine had Maeviath pause. So those are yours now. He pointed at the 2 runic blades on my bed with my pack. I nodded and studied Constantine. Maybe it was just a talk with Castile, but I could see the suspicion in his eyes. Flavius was ignoring me completely as he packed his backpack. I noticed a bundle of silvery arrows on the bed, so he must have received the runic arrows already. Maeviath broke the silence. Benito brought you this. His large hand dumped a mess of silver into my hand. 10 large silver and 40 small, Maeviath informed me. I moved the payout of the bets to my storage. Yes, Constantine. I'm going to loan one of the blades to Brutus, though I am not sure which one yet. I assume you heard about the amulet as well, I said, sitting on my bed, my face impassive. From Matteo, yes. Of course, who else? Sounds useful. I hope you're using it well, he said indifferently. Maybe it could feel the tension in the room and asked, Does anyone want to play checkers? The cuteness never ceases. Constantine disappointed Mavius. We should all get some rest. It is going to be a long walk tomorrow. After inspecting the wyvern, I knew both Constantine and Flavius had questions about me. Laying down, I prepared. I moved the amulet to my hand and entered the dreamscape. I only spent a few moments encasing the bookshelf inside a rock wall in the scorpion room before exiting. I returned the amulet to my space for safety. The only way someone could claim it was by killing me, forcing the contents of my space into the real world. As I settled into an uncomfortable sleep, the unpleasant dreams came quickly. No matter where I went in my dreams, someone wanted the amulet. It started with Matteo asking incessantly to borrow it on the march. Then it was Constantine's Praetorian master trying to get it from me in exchange for her protection. Then it was the first citizen Boris demanding to fight me for it over and over. I beat him down every time. Constantine was up first and kicked the bed to wake me. Time to wake, Eric. We have an hour before breakfast. Let's see if you deserve to carry those blades. I was awake instantly, but it was still dark outside, and Constantine held a glowstone. Am I still dreaming? I asked myself softly, even though I knew this was not a dream. Constantine barked a laugh. The rackets from Constantine had forced Flavius and Mavius to wake. I'm flattered you dream about me, Eric. Get your armor on. We only have an hour to make sure you do not cut yourself with your new swords. Constantine was being Constantine, and I did not detect suspicion in his voice. He was gone, stamping down the stone steps. I groaned, but started moving. Chapter 127. The Black Blade. I followed Constantine down to the training yard, carrying my pack and 2 blades, so I would be ready to leave when the company marched. It was still dark when we arrived. The training yard was adjacent to the Citadel barracks, where the rest of the company was quartered. No one was up yet, and it was maybe an hour before sunrise. I decided to tease Constantine that I knew some of his secrets. So, you have a spell form that allows you to get by with less sleep. Constantine eyed me with an appraising stare. I do. I need about half what a normal man does. Just means I was required to stand watch more often than not while I was with the hounds. Constantine had his own pack and was getting ready for some practice. He took on a paternal tone as he gave me advice. You will just find the more spell forms you have, the more that is expected of you. But you know that already with your dimensional space spell form. I nodded as I was testing both blades, deciding what to use first. Are we wrapping our blades? I asked, since Constantine had made no effort to so. We usually use practice swords or wrapped our actual blades when practice blades were not available. You can heal yourself, Eric. There is no need to wrap mine. Constantine said dismissively with his back to me. I could imagine the eager grin on his face. I had been waiting for him to say something like that. Yeah, I can, but I do not have a lot of ether, so I can only heal a little. I hoped this would prevent him from causing me a serious injury to test my healing as I wrapped my blade in the tacky cloth. Constantine still did not wrap his blade and asked, Is that how you kept up on the run to the capital? You healed your feet as we went. I nodded, and he half smiled, shaking his head in an un-Constantine-like manner. Damn, Eric. My feet felt like an ogre had chewed on them during that run. Seeing you not suffering made me think I was getting soft. So I made you feel inadequate, I smirked, and he lost his good humor instantly. Eric, this is not good. He's gonna fucking hit you with the blade, please. Be nice. Constantine walked over to me, now all business, and held out his hand. Do you mind if I look at them? I had to remember trying to befriend the chorus man to find out why Castile was deemed important by his Praetorian guard. I handed him both blades. The polished one is orc forged, and the black one is just old. He first held the partially wrapped black blade. It is sometimes called a devoted blade, Eric, forged by the smiths of the First Legion before the elves killed them all. That is why there are no runic smiths in the Empire. They are always killed as soon as they are recognized. There might be some working in secret for the Emperor, but they are not known publicly, Constantine stated in a scholarly tone. The elves killed the runic smiths? I asked, interested in the small piece of history. For the Radiant assassins, yes. Not always elves, though. Actually, the elves of Essenheim signed the peace treaty with the Italian Empire on condition all devoted blades forged to kill elves were destroyed. Fair. He moved his hand along the length of the black blade. It was mostly black with a large number of tiny pits in it. As I was saying, the devoted blades were forged to kill one specific enemy. When carving out the Empire, the First Legion fought campaigns against the orcs, dwarves, elves, goblins, gnolls, centaurs, and other humans. Most likely, this blade was forged against one of those. He handed me back the blade. It is rare and valuable then. So what does it do? Can it kill them with one swing? I swung the blade to test its weight. I have only read the histories, and this is my first time seeing one. The Black Blade companies were elite units in the various campaigns sent after the most troubling opponents. The stories say the Black Blades prevented beings from using magical healing, including potions, after being injured, Constantine informed me while facing me. The blades are uncommon, but not rare, and probably hang on the walls of most citadels in the Empire. Dungeon blades are much more valuable and useful against all types of creatures. So will this blade not work against the specters? I asked, reconsidering choosing this blade. It will. It is a runic weapon. The black coloring is rumored to be from silver and other materials mixed with the iron on forging. There is an ancient tale about the black blades. It may regain some of its luster if you soak it in the blood of the enemy it was devoted to fight. If you find another wielder of such a blade, you should ask them. He was ready to begin, and we engaged to start our practice. The clang of steel woke the men up, and a few came outside to watch from a distance and prepare for the march, repacking their packs. I realized they would not be happy with Constantine or me for waking them early. Neither of us was using shields, and the first serious injury was to my forearm. After parrying my blade, Constantine cut all the way to the bone on a slash where the vambrace did not cover. I cradled my arm to conceal the healing as best I could from watchful eyes. Reknitting the muscle and flesh took time, and Constantine watched, shaking his head in disbelief. I do not think he believed I could heal myself until he saw it with his own eyes. Constantine nodded to himself now that it was confirmed. Okay, Eric, your biggest problem is getting used to the longer sword. Your mind and muscle memory are still trying to use it like a shorter blade. The length gives you extra reach to attack and defend. Oh, really? Does a longer blade give me extra reach? That's crazy. You have enough strength and leverage to use it one-handed effectively. But a two-handed grip will give you more control. The longer blade and handle allow for different techniques. Now you just need to train those movements often enough so your muscle memory can use them instinctively. Yet now you have to go all Sorrow One Piece training. Just do the, 1,000 slashes a day or some shit. Constantine spent the next half an hour teaching me sword forms for the longer blade, more complex ones that I learned in Legion training. He barked as we engaged, and he forced me back. A free hand, when wielding a blade one-handed, offers great versatility, but the speed, power, and control when using a second hand are worthy trade-offs at times. Almost the entire company was outside watching now, including Brutus. I had tried the orcish blade, but the black blade just felt better in my hands. I was only loaning the other blade to Brutus anyway. Adrian appeared with Delmar first and yelled, "Breakfast inside, then we march." As the cold air dried our sweat, I walked inside with Constantine. He asked, "Did you see him?" "See who?" I asked, confused. "First Citizen Boris. He was watching you from the third-floor balcony. I am disappointed if you did not see him," he said, shaking his head. I noticed people watching from the windows of the citadel, but I didn't know who they were. I was too busy trying to avoid your blade seeking my flesh, I muttered. Constantine clapped me on the back in an almost fatherly pat. I taught you better than that. Danger can come from anywhere. My impression is the first citizen Boris is about as smart as an ordinary bull. But if you ignore that bull, its horn will pierce your heart when you least expect it. Constantine went to sit with Adrian and Delmar, leaving me to take a table with Brutus and Matteo. I preempted Brutus's question. Yes, Brutus, I will loan you the orcish-made blade. The black blade feels better in my hands. Matteo sounded in. You were lucky that Constantine was not part of the contest. He brutalized you this morning and could have won the blade. Brutus defended me. He gave Constantine as good as he got. Eric was probably pulling a strike so as not to hurt the old man. Besides, he has his own runic weapon already. Matteo was bouncing and itching to change the topic. Do not even ask, Matteo. My answer is still no. Matteo looked distressed but did not ask to borrow the dreamscape amulet again. Felix came, put a massive haunch of ham on the table, and sat with us. Blaze brought a bowl of small boiled potatoes. To everyone's disappointment, the pitchers were full of only water this morning. Oh no. I noted with some snark. Since the Countess arrived, the food and drink quality has really dropped off. Everyone was using knives to cut off chunks of the boiled ham. Blaze commented. That is because you spend your nights in the alchemist tower. We usually get the leftovers from the Duchess' dinner with her mother. Seconds, but extremely tasty, and at least it is seasoned. He tapped the bland ham with his knife. As we ate, the conversation drifted to the company contest yesterday. I only half followed the conversation and nodded when appropriate. It was all too soon when Castilla arrived with Scholar Fabian, and Delmar ordered us to form ranks. Everyone made to stuff as much food as they could into their mouths as we went to shoulder our packs and began to march. Adrian addressed me. You will be marching next to Castile in the center, Eric. I nodded, as it seemed I would be talking with Castile during the march. Castile was dressed in comfortable clothing and even had a small pack herself, which I found surprising. She usually did not carry any gear, but then I remembered we had a kettle of souls. I assumed that was what she was transporting. Fabian was on her right, and I was positioned on her left. After we settled into the march, Castile said, You are going to protect Scholar Fabian, Castile smirked. Do not look surprised. You carry a runic weapon and proved yourself one of the best swordsmen in the company. Your aptitude to shield Cinna with your spell form was also a consideration. So, no more scouting with Constantine? I said, confused. We had agreed I would get closer to him and learn his purpose in the company. No, not with you carrying the potions again. Flavius is also back to scout with Constantine. Castile noted the scout further down the road. It was late morning when we reached the junction of the trade road that led to the ruins of Caelora. We took a short break at the intersection before starting the march north. The dirt road was lined with farms, but all too soon we reached the old paved trade road. Everyone got tense with the stone road beneath us. We had fought the Wraith and were headed into direwolf territory. Castile and Fabian talked about their plans for exploring the haunted city, and I listened as we walked. The first step was circling it and seeing if the maps Fabian had in the books matched. There were only 2 gates through the walls, the east and west gates. Fabian thought the west gate was the better access point as it was near the Elven library, where many of the books in the Duchess's collection had been salvaged. Fabian only found a short accounting of the expedition that recovered the books. The expedition members camped a mile outside the west gate, and on the first day of clear skies and sunshine, they rushed to the library to recover as many books as they could. The specters had trouble in daylight, and they encountered only a handful inside the building. Still, 6 members of the 20-man expedition had died. Wow, that's many. Holy. Listening to Fabian describe the journal entries of the mage who led the expedition, I was not feeling too confident about our chances, but glad I now had a runic blade to fend off the supernatural creatures. I also had the runic elven dagger as a backup weapon, and thought about loaning it to the scholar since he already knew about it. If the situation made sense, I decided to lend it to him so he could defend himself. The two finally discussed the possible locations for the mysterious shimmering labyrinth. Fabian gave his perspective. I strongly believe it is under the dominant hearth tree on the west side of the city. I have found numerous references of mages accessing the ley lines in the city in the same area, but no definitive location to the dungeon. Are you sure it is even in the city? Castile questioned, doubt in her tone. Fabian wavered. We have been over this before, Mage Castile. The selection of books they took on the expedition is highly varied. There are 19 references to the dungeon, but it does not appear on any of the maps. The Elven King and his court kept its location secret. The conversation went back and forth as Fabian described the city layout. The city's east side was residential, and the only area where non-elves had been permitted. The west side housed important citizens, such as the nobility, the wealthy, and many of their past artisans. Best artisans. That is what the city was known for. High-quality trade goods. They celebrated master craftsmen and the works of art they produced. Constantine came back from scouting to report to Castile, and Adrian and Delmar joined him. Castile noted, We are still south of the direwolf territory. I suggest we make camp soon. There was a brief discussion, and 4 miles later, Flavius found a defensible hill with clean water nearby, and we set up camp. Maeviath had Fabian's gear and set up their tents. Since I was in charge of his protection, I set my tent next to him. Maeviath set his own tarp next to mine. I was dreading Constantine asking me to train with the Black Blade. Instead, Castile approached Maeviath and me, saying, Maeviath, make sure you watch Eric while he sleeps. I do not believe one can perceive the outside world while using a dreamscape amulet. Castile made eye contact with me and nodded slightly before leaving. Castile was telling me that she expected me to use the amulet. Maeviath nodded seriously. I will guard your body with my life, Eric. Maybe I would not have to stand watch either. What about my turn on the watch? I inquired to confirm with the departing Castile. You are tied to Fabian. Do not leave his side, Castile said, talking over her shoulder as she walked away. Constantine overheard. Do not worry, Eric. I am sure Fabian will not mind watching you train. Fabian, already inside his tent, replied, I do not mind watching you practice, Eric. I heard of your exploits in the competition. Great, I said, sarcastically. After Castile left, I told Maeviath quietly, If you remove the amulet from my body, I will wake. I thought there were some secrets I would prefer to keep. A few hours later, I was in my tent after a supposedly short session with Constantine before dinner. Dinner was cold, and only a little was left when we approached Larkin for our portion. He gave me an apologetic look as he scraped the pot for my bowl. Before using the amulet, I used a glowstone for light to page through all of Fabian's books. I wanted to add them to my dreamscape tonight. With the amulet in hand, I channeled Ether into it. Oi, what the fuck? Okay. Hello? It's a picture book now. We got AI direwolf pictures and a small dog. I know it's in the background, but damn, that is way tinier than this one. Holy shit. Okay. That's a big motherfucker. Okay. Wait, okay, sure. Chapter 128. Dire Feelings. The dreamscape looked as I had left it. I was half expecting to find strangers inside for some reason, now that others knew about it. Oscar greeted me with his bobtail wagging empathically. I petted the excitable Australian shepherd. I continued the dog therapy by talking to him. Guess this secret space is out in the open, Oscar. Oscar barked and chased to get a tennis ball I had created for him. I laughed. Guess it doesn't matter to you. You probably want more people to play with anyway. I tossed the ball for him while I made copies of the elven books Scholar Fabian had me carry. I couldn't read them, but there were some maps inside. Maybe the knowledge will be useful in the future, so I would not mind the backlash from adding too much from the dreamscape at once. With that task done, I walked into the first monster room, the Ankeg chamber. My sparring partners were playing cards. Constantine arched his eyebrow at me. Going to get some practice today, or are you going to sit and lace about all night? He put down his cards, waiting for my response. I had just practiced with Constantine in the real world for over 2 hours this morning and this evening. I sighed. Yes, I manifested my new blade. The group around the table eyed the black blade curiously. They were waiting for me to choose someone to practice with. The table consisted of Maviath, Constantine, Adrian, Blaze, and Xavier. I nodded reluctantly to Constantine, as I had practiced with him this morning and this evening as I adapted to the new weapon. With Constantine's help, I was now holding the blade more confidently. I was also confident I could beat the man in combat, using my protection spell form. What I wanted to be able to do was beat him without placing a single air disc. We moved to the center of the chamber and began. The Constantine in the dreamscape had improved quite a bit. I realized the magic amulet had upgraded Constantine's fighting style based on our practice today. It was learning from my new memories. It meant that the dreamscape manifestations were imperfect but could be improved upon. I spent 2 hours with Constantine and an hour with Xavier. Xavier's manifestation was good, but I doubted it fully incorporated the Swordmaster's experience. I tried to combine Xavier's skills with Constantine's. The results were surprising. Constantine's style had been blunter and simpler, while Xavier had an efficient and artistic style moving between the sword forms. Constantine's new blended swordsmanship suddenly became unbeatable. It was frustrating to fight his new efficient form. I took repeated losses and decided I had enough. I returned to the entry room and studied the spell form for slow aging. I was getting closer to the tipping point where I would finally learn the spell form. After about 7 total hours had passed, I stepped out of the dungeon and left the dreamscape. I opened my eyes to darkness and strained my hearing to perceive my surroundings. Men snored in their tents, and the men on watch whispered nearby. The night guards were arguing over who had the better attendant at the citadel. I could tell by the arguments' voices that it was Felix and Benito. If I remember correctly, Felix had a short, fat, middle-aged woman, and Benito an older woman who constantly scowled. I felt well rested and sat up. My head spun with vertigo, and I lay back down. The mental strain from adding to the dreamscape soon passed. Adding 8 books had been a little much in one session, or maybe it had been upgrading Constantine in conjunction. When I felt comfortable, I exited the tent and nodded to Maviath, who was whittling new sheker pieces. Oh. Serving the camp, there were 2 small fires. One had Constantine stoking a fire, and the other had Lurkin preparing hot food for the company's breakfast. I could see my breath. It was one of the coldest mornings I had experienced. I went and sat across to Constantine, who was focused on heating water in a small cup. The heat of the fire felt amazing on my legs as I edged them closer and closer till it almost burned. "How many days to Kaelora?" I asked. 2. He sipped his tea contentedly. "We will be in the direwolf territory after mid-morning. I am unsure if Castile will have us increase the pace or use caution. Positives and negatives to both courses of action." Before he could expound on the positives and negatives, I asked him a question. "Have you fought direwolves before?" I stirred the coals on my side to release more heat. "I have. Smart creatures. They will distract the group and then pick off the weakest member, dragging them away. Hopefully our numbers will deter them from attacking," Constantine said, while cleaning his cup of tea leaves. He then took out his weapons to clean, starting with his runic weapon. The silvery blade looked ethereal, reflecting the firelight. I took out my black blade to sharpen and clean as well. Like a power move. I also have a runic weapon. You do not sharpen a runic weapon, Eric. Did you notice it has no sharps on the edge? That durability is one reason why runic blades are cherished. To clean it, just use a rag to clean the length, then use the oil rag on it. It will make sure it draws smoothly. I worked in silence across from Constantine. The oil rag he referred to was used for our metal helms to protect them from rusting. Constantine cycled through his weapons, and I did likewise. I was still carrying my short sword, a knife on my belt, and the Legion utility hatchet in my pack. Seeing us finish, Lurkin called us over for an early breakfast. Constantine and I enjoyed the dense bread that tasted like garlic, topped with warm berry preserves Lurkin had heated. Ah, Maviath joined us, blary-eyed, after a short nap. He had watched over me while I slept all night, which is not what I had intended. I just wanted him to rouse me if there was a threat. Mayviet's deep voice soon awakened the whole camp a little earlier than sunrise. Delmar called everyone to eat and announced we would start an early march. Mayviet received some annoyed stares. Aww. Back on the old trade road, we walked till just past midday before a rest. I ended up working on my understanding of the Elven language with Scholar Fabian as a distraction from the boredom of marching. My Elven vocabulary was growing, but the scholar was not impressed with my pronunciations. We set a fast pace, and Flavius and Constantine were scouting only a short distance ahead. As we marched in the afternoon, the scouts started to find direwolf tracks crossing the road. They were massive, larger than a man's hand. We encountered our first direwolf later in the day. A signal from the rear guard had everyone turn, and our 8 men with shields quickly formed a wall. It looked like just a normal grey wolf at maybe 200 yards back. Then another darker grey wolf walked into the road to stand over the pup. Okay, so it was a baby. Maybe it advised the company. They are not hunting us. If they were, then they would not have shown themselves. His statement did not make anyone less tense. I was shocked as the larger wolf was just as big as Ginger. Yeah, that's big. Benito noticed the same thing. That beast is as big as a horse. I wonder if I can ride it. What the fuck? Firth barked a harsh laugh at Benito. Why don't you go and give it a try and let us know how it goes? Some laughs and snickers from the company eased the tension a little. Oh. Blaze, behind me, asked. I can hit it. Should I? There were some whispers between Castile and Delmar before Delmar announced. Hold your arrows. Firth and Mateo, you are added to the rear guard. We tightened the formation, and Constantine and Flavius were now only leading the company by 20 strides so they could retreat back to us quickly. Adrian was constantly reminding individuals of their jobs if a pack of direwolves did attack. Half the men were instructed to defend, and the other half were charged with killing whichever monstrous wolf Castile restrained with her shadow chains first. It was important to eliminate one foe at a time as quickly as possible when attacked with numbers. Scholar Fabian was probably the most nervous among us after we spotted the direwolf. I tried to take his mind off of danger. Fabian, have you learned anything about the dungeon? What monsters are inside? The king controlled the dungeon, and it gave vast resources to the city. Iron ore and silver were mined from inside it as the craftsmen in the city used it in great quantities. There are also a few references to rarer metals, mithril for one, he said giddily. It also supplies vast quantities of meat to the city. He paused to think. References to dishes prepared with boiled spider legs, bear meat, and mushrooms from the dungeon have appeared in my reading. While I was thinking about what horrors supplied those things, Larkin, our company cook, asked, How do you prepare spider legs? Scholar Fabian had a big smile. I wondered that myself. Really? Apparently, you need to boil the legs and crack them open for the meat. Not all varieties are edible, but I read it tastes just like crab meat, only saltier. The elves seemed to like the meat dipped in melted butter made from goat's milk. Delmar, at the front of the formation, replied, Spider meat is a bit mushy, but not bad. On long delves, you eat what the dungeon provides. It is not uncommon for larger dungeons to support entire communities. I remember Delmar being a delver before getting conscripted. He addressed the scholar. What else did you find about the dungeon? Nothing. Just a name appears in some text I pieced together. It was called the Shimmering Labyrinth. I think it is extremely large based on the references, but the king kept it hidden from the outside world as a treasure of his city and people, Scholar Fabian replied with uncertainty. Firth announced from the back. The large wolf is following us. It is in the woods, maybe 200 yards back. Mayviet offered his input again. If it were hunting us, then it would have called the rest of the pack. It is probably making sure we are leaving its territory. Maybe it is teaching the young one how to stalk its prey. Brutus noted, If we are the prey, then your words are not reassuring, Mayviet. There was some back and forth among the men when Castile ordered, Halt! Constantine! She called a scout back from the further down the road. When he returned, she ordered, "Go and check on the wagons we found on our way here." Constantine rushed into the woods, and I realized we were approaching the area where we had discovered the wagons. I remember picking up a gold ring from the ground at the time. The money from the locked chest had gotten the company replacement armor and overall. Constantine whistled for Maviath, and the Goliath went to support him. It was not far from the road, and we could see them as the leaves had all fallen from the trees and bushes. I checked on our furry follower, and it sat on its hind legs about 200 yards back, almost taunting us. I could tell Blaze was itching to take a shot, but Castile held him back. When Constantine and Maviath returned, just small animals had been by since. Castile nodded, but she had apparently expected something else by her consternation. The short rest was over, and we continued our march. Like D&D. There was a discussion on when we would stop for the night, as we had covered almost 40 miles today on the road. Castile told everyone to take out glowstones, and we marched into the night. Castile, being next to me, I asked, "Are we continuing because of the direwolf?" Castile considered her answer. "A direwolf following us is not unusual. What I am confused about was the first smaller wolf we spotted. We have not seen it since. I even searched for it and other direwolves. The large one behind us is the only one." Maybe it put it into its space. Fortunately, the blue moon was bright overhead, and the skies were clear. We marched for 3 hours in the darkness before Castile finally ordered us to camp in the middle of the road. Constantine objected until Castile told him she hoped the direwolf would approach during the night so she could snare it with her shadow chains and we could eliminate it. That got everyone excited. Really? Eliminating our stalker would be welcome and boost morale. Yeah, if it succeeds. We set up a tight camp for the night, and the watch was doubled. Castile reminded Maviath to watch over me again. It was her way of telling me to use the amulet tonight. I did not know how I felt about using the amulet with danger so close. I reminded Maviath, "All you need to do is remove the amulet to awake me, but get some sleep tonight yourself." "I understood you the first 5 times you said it, Eric." The Goliath seemed frustrated that I either did not trust him, thought his memory was terrible, or was tense like the others with the direwolf stalking us. My tent was in the company's center, next to Scholar Fabian. When I crawled inside, I debated not using the amulet again. It felt like there was a building tension in the air to me. I think Castile felt it too. I decided to spend a few hours inside anyway, and focus on the spell form for slow aging. With Oscar in my lap, I spent 2 hours studying, and then exited the dreamscape. I listened, and men were whispering, but there was no alarm. I could hear Maviath breathing heavily as he sat on a log he had rolled over near our tents. I entered the dreamscape again. Oh, okay. He's like, "I don't think I'm gonna use it." Uses it twice. About 3 hours in, the familiar feeling of the spell form inscribing on my core sweeping through me. Oh! Congrats, Eric! I had learned the slow aging spell form inside the dreamscape. I exited the dreamscape, and I did no longer know slow aging. Turns out I only know it in the dreamscape. Fuck. Excited to study it and learn how it worked. Nothing had changed in the camp, but Castile was agitated as the direwolf was apparently still watching us, but had not approached. I studied the spell form and activated it. It was supposed to draw a slow trickle of ether to slow my aging greatly. The trickle was so insignificant I did not even perceive it. I used some ether to cast some air shields and frowned. I had wanted to see how fast my ether recovered with the slow aging active. My best guess was that my ether was recovering at half of normal. At least that was the best I could estimate. It was still a decent trade-off for being able to live for thousands of years. I would say so, yeah. I smiled as I lay awake for the rest of the night, listening to everyone and thinking about what I would do with all the time in the world. The sunrise came, and the direwolf had never approached the camp. It had also remained vigilant, unnervingly watching us the entire night. Ooh. Oh, more pictures. This is the cover art, though. Maybe the direwolf was also considered cover art? Or this is actually tied to the fucking chapter. Because I assume this is the guy that I can never pronounce his name right. The one that talked to Eric through the wyvern, who has his own wyvern dragon thing. Traeliorn, yeah. I mean, yes, okay, so it is connected to Shafter, and it was who I thought it was. Well, Chapter 129. Traeliorn Kelleran, POV. Okay, let's go. After arriving in the Telian wilderness, Traeliorn left his apprentice Veyril and Ranger Aurelia and flew north on the back of Kilma. The Ice Drake was a good mountain friend. She moved with his body and did most of the work as they flew north, so he did not even require a saddle. His plan was simple. He would summon the largest wyvern he could and attack small towns south of the Telian capital. The wyvern would kill the peasants, making the emperor look incompetent and unable to protect his citizens. His goal was actually to get the emperor to leave his palace. Then Traeliorn would attack him, putting his life on the line to end the accursed void mage. The emperor had caused him so much pain and grief over the last 2 centuries that he was willing to risk his life to finally kill him. Traeliorn landed between 2 rocky summits and sent Kilma to one of the peaks to watch over him as he worked. Summoning a wyvern was always a difficult task. Luring one through an open portal took a lot of ether and a powerful summoner. The draconic beasts also had very primal desires: hunt, kill, eat, and reproduce. And the negotiation with the beast would usually have to satisfy those needs. I'll give you so many bitches, I swear to God. I promise. Deal? Deal. He spent an entire day laying out the largest formation he had ever constructed. He laughed, thinking it was big enough to summon an actual dragon. He was not stupid enough to try that, though. A dragon's will was too strong and would not even enter negotiations. Traeliorn preferred to bypass the negotiation phase of a summoning and instead dominate the mind of the creature when it came through the portal. He spent an entire day resting in preparation, and Kilma brought him a large fresh fish to eat. I suppose you want me to cook it for the both of us. The Ice Drake puffed a frozen cloud at him. Fine. It is a good 20 pounds. I'm taking the best fillet for myself. The Drake puffed another cloud before curling into a ball and watching him work. The summoner skillfully descaled and sliced the fish. He found a large flat rock and held out his hand as he wove the spell forms together. A flame erupted from his palm as he blasted the stone until it turned an angry red. The heat was welcome as the weather was turning. It was not turning fast enough for him. He wanted to see the fruits of his labors. He had targeted fields and farms across the eastern Telian Empire. This winter, the peasants of the Telian Empire would starve and blame the emperor. The stone cooled enough to cook the large fillets. He reached deep into his belt pouch and pulled some salt and herbs to season the fillets. When he flipped them after a few minutes, Kilma got up and eagerly approached. Old girl, you should be eating this raw. I have spoiled you too much with cooked food. The Ice Drake gave an indignant puff. Consider this your reward for flying my old bones around. Traeliorn took a small piece of the fish after it was perfectly cooked, and the Ice Drake quickly consumed what was left behind. Kilma then launched herself into the air to keep watch from one of the peaks again. The summoner shook his head and considered sending the Drake away if the emperor left his palace to confront him. It was something that was unlikely to happen, though. He began the ritual summoning with the watery blue moon, giving him strong light. The wyvern scale at the center was the focus as he poured ether into the runes he had carefully inscribed on the ground to focus his power. The magic would search for a match to that scale on all of Desia and sometimes beyond. He liked to think of it like fishing, casting out a line and hook, seeking out the fish on its own. It was almost an hour before he finally got a bite. He had devoted 2/3 of his ether to so far and was slightly worried when the portal finally anchored and opened, showing a wyvern on the other side. Even before the beast stepped through, he knew it was formidable. It came fearlessly through and immediately launched at the mage. The dragonkin's size and the attack's ferocity made him flinch. It was practically the size of an actual dragon. The containment runes flared blue, green, and red as they held the massive wyvern in place. It strained and roared defiance inside the circle. Traeliorn tried to establish a connection to its mind, but the creature was stronger than a wyvern should be. It was like wrestling an oiled pig from his youth. Okay, why did you do that? He kept grabbing at it, only to have it slip away. Traeliorn was sweating as his ether was slowly consumed in the fight for dominance. Finally, the wyvern made a mistake, and Traeliorn slipped into its mind and subdued its thoughts. What a mistake! It thought of something else? Oh, look over there! Oh no! He trapped me in his mind. The elf summoner sat heavily on the ground, his heart still raised from the struggle, a struggle he almost lost. He only had about 1/20th of his ether remaining. Kilma landed next to him, now that the difficult part was done. He noted that she used him as a buffer to the wyvern. He scratched her ear holes to let her know he was fine. He scratched her ear. Ew! Tip, don't do that. That sounds so not pleasant. He drank his entire water skin before slipping back into the mind of the impressive wyvern. Controlling a beast through its mind was not easy. He would give it back some control to make it easier on himself and allow himself time to recover. The wyvern lost the game. Oh my god, do you know about the game? Dude, okay, I do not know. Okay, my friend in high school told me about the game because he just randomly one day said, I lost. And I was like, sorry, what? And then he explained to me the game. And I have not known anyone in any place of the world in my whole life that has known about this. Okay? So I'm like, did he make this up? If it did, it's amazing. I have spread it. It's amazing. It's the best. I lost, by the way. But holy shit, bro. That's crazy that I hear of the game on my stream. Because everyone I've told it about is also like, what the fuck do you mean? And then I've explained it and they're like, it's brilliant. It's the best thing ever. So now I was just extremely surprised. Because I did not know that it was a bigger thing. That's crazy. That makes me happy and sad. Spread the love of the game. The wyvern launched into the air, and Traeliorn began the search for the largest farming communities north of him. He found a farmer in a field harvesting squash. A horse pulled a cart while the farmer and his children deposited squash into the cart for winter. He set the wyvern loose on the people and lessened his connection to the beast. The summoner collapsed on the ground, checking in on the wyvern periodically as it terrorized and killed peasants. Even after it had satiated its hunger, the summoner nudged it to continue its rampage against the people. It had been a few hours since the summoning when he received a message sending from his apprentice, Varel. Master Kelrin, the legionnaires have found us. They have a drake and more than one mage with them. We are running, but I do not think we will last long. Please send help. Traeliorn's heart pounded. He was going to lose another apprentice and friend. Not to mention the ranger protector's death would anger the general as well. He reconnected with the wyvern that was massacring a pasture of sheep. Pasture? No. The creature tried to resist Traeliorn's mind, but the link had already been anchored. He forced the creature into the air and sent it south to find his apprentice. Such complete control drained his ether rapidly as he searched through the eyes of the beast. He headed for any large flying creatures in the skies. He was searching for the drake. Varel had an anchor stone for a portal, making it somewhat easier to determine the course, but it was more of a feeling than a true direction. He knew he was not going to make it in time. It was just too far, but at least he could get his revenge. There. Not the drake, but the anchor stone. The massive wyvern landed in an open, greasy area, dotted with trees. Underneath one of the trees, he found Varel alive. When the wyvern did not attack, relief filled the young elf's face. Master Kelrin, is that you? Traeliorn used weak telepathy to communicate through his bond with the wyvern. "It is me. Where are the ranger and legionnaires?" A pained look came on Beryl's face. "She gave me more time to run. They caught her. The legionnaires killed the 2 hill giants I summoned and are coming after me. They have a powerful fire mage with them, Master Kelleran." The conversation was interrupted when a drake zipped over the trees. A man was riding it. The wyvern launched itself into the sky in pursuit. The summoner gathered his rage at much smaller creature. The aerial pursuit quickly got frustrating. The wyvern had overfilled its belly, not helping its agility. The rider and drake were too agile and fast, and the rider kept trying to anchor his own dominance on the mind of the wyvern. It was becoming futile, and Traeleon's ether was almost empty. He needed to take a risk. He pushed his mind to a corner of the wyvern and left the rest for the mage to subvert. He was a powerful human mage, who soon grappled the remaining mind into submission, but did not realize Traeleon was lurking. The Empire mage landed his drake, thinking himself victorious, and approached the wyvern wearing a sneering grin. Conquering this beast was an impressive feat. Traeleon had almost failed himself. If Traeleon had not already weakened its defenses, the human mage would not have had a chance. But here they were. He waited as the human approached to claim his prize. The human even foolishly left his drake behind in his hubris. When he was in striking distance, Traeleon pushed his mind out to regain control. The mage realized his mistake too late, and the wyvern's long neck snapped out and consumed him in one bite. Some defensive magic flared inside the wyvern's mouth, but the angry wyvern ground the mage with its teeth, crunching bones and forcing him down his throat to an already full belly. The drake took exception to his rider being eaten and charged the wyvern. The massive wyvern easily swatted it down and tore out its throat in seconds. The wyvern roared in victory, and Traeleon smiled far away. He had saved his apprentice and killed the powerful mind mage of the Empire. Traeleon took control of the wyvern, planning to have it carry Varel back to him in its claws. He walked the beast toward the trees, and his blood froze. The wyvern rushed the tree and battered it over, uncovering the dead apprentice with a legionnaire sword piercing down into Varel's body. The pained look on Varel's face made the summoner go into a rage. He had been so close. He had been so distracted by fighting the drake that he had left Varel unprotected. The wyvern's head snapped up, looking for movement. There. He forced the wyvern to chase the 2 fleeing legionnaires. He would get some modicum of revenge. One of the men made it into the trees, but the wyvern cut the other one off, like a cat cutting off a mouse. The legionnaire was halted in his tracks, separated from his companion. Arrows uselessly bounced off the scales of the wyvern as Traeleon stared through its eyes. In the Italian speech, the legionnaires defied the wyvern and his fate, saying, "You prefer to play with your food. Well, bring it on." Traeleon approached slowly and sent a message into the legionnaire's mind. "You killed Varel, my apprentice." He looked shocked at the message, but seemed to understand the wyvern was talking to him. Surprise crossed his face. He asked, "Traeleon?" So the young legionary knew who he was. He must be a hound sent to find him, and he found Varel instead. The wyvern's black eyes focused on the legionnaire. Traeleon wanted confirmation he was getting his revenge. "Did you kill my apprentice?" he repeated. "Yes," the legionnaire answered with a clear and flat tone, not denying it. He was brave to be standing before certain death. Most men would have cowered, begged for their life, or soiled themselves. Instead, he stood defiantly, welcoming his fate. Far away, Traeleon acknowledged his bravery and sent the final message to the human. "Then, legionnaire, know that it was I who sent you to your afterlife for your crime. Traeleon Kelleran, Varel's teacher and friend." The wyvern roared and lunged at the legionnaire with its powerful legs and neck. Traeleon gasped as the backlash from his mental link with the wyvern was severed. He fell to the ground, and Kilman nudged his exhausted body worriedly. His ether was spent, and his head felt intense pressure. He was in disbelief. The wyvern must have been killed. How was that even possible? So instantaneously. Only one thing could have done that. Void magic. It must be another accursed void mage, like the Emperor. How powerful would he have to be to slay a wyvern with just a spell form? Traelior needed rest, a lot of rest to recover from the backlash and ordeal of the day. He was not going to return to Bardaradian lands until he got his revenge on the legionnaire who killed Veril. He rationalized his delay by thinking that the killing of a Void Mage would help the Bardaradian war effort. A few days later, Traeliorn was watching through a wolf's eyes. As two legionnaires searched the wyvern and Veril's body. He was still too weak to attack. He had come here in hopes of returning Veril's body to the earth, but found the legionnaires here instead. He should have known they would want to harvest the wyvern. He watched and waited for them to leave. When they did, he had the wolf follow them. Kilma stayed on the lookout, while Traeliorn buried Veril. He actually shed tears as he completed the task, promising the corpse he would avenge it. The wolf followed the legionnaires back to the city of Sobral. The next day, it followed them along the road, and then north along the old abandoned trade road. There were over 20 of them in the company, but only 2 apparent mages in the group, and that legionnaire with void magic was among them as well. So 3 likely had strong magic. Traeliorn landed and dismounted Kilma a good distance away. He was still much too weak to confront them, but it would still take them days of travel to reach the capital. A direwolf came out of the brush to challenge Kilma. Traeliorn smiled, finding the contest of wills with the direwolf, even in his current state, to be simple. He sent the direwolf to replace the common wolf and track the mage company. He figured they must be returning to the capital on the old road. He would not let them get there, though. He just needed to recover more before he could summon again. Well, what would he summon? What the fuck? More AI. What is this supposed to be? What is this supposed to be? A ghost elf? A specter? A specter! Could be the specter. So many just random AI pictures in here now. What the fuck? Chapter 130. Disconcerting Decisions. As I joined the company for breakfast, I did not feel immortal. Quite the opposite. Even with my slow aging active, I was certainly in danger of being part of the Legion. I realized I had become somewhat numb to a fear of injury and death. It was just part of my daily life now. Castile was watching the direwolf as she ate with dried fruit and salted crackers. Blaze, can you hit it? She asked the marksman. Blaze looked up, excited at the prospect of finally getting his wish. He rushed to stand next to Castile and studied the direwolf for a few moments. No, the arrow's arc most likely would not make it through the high branches. Maybe if we encountered a clearing. Castile studied the massive wolf and said, "Take the shot if you think you can get it." Well, Blaze nodded emphatically and went through his arrows, selecting the best one for when the opportunity arose. It was a long breakfast and a slow time packing up the camp, and Delmar did not rush us as normal. My suspicion was everyone was dragging because they knew we would be close to the Kaelora and the specters this evening. Castile had me open one of the salves to give to Linus. He was using small swabs of the gel on the worst blistering and chafing of the company. Some men had gained weight in Sobral, and their armor no longer fit perfectly, causing the chafing. It was a luxury we could afford now that we had a supply of salve. As we started to march, the direwolf followed us but remained in the trees far back, not allowing Blaze to take the shot. It appeared much more intelligent than it should be. During a rest, I heard Constantine talking with Castile. The direwolf will stop following us when we get within sight of the ruins. I'm surprised it has followed us this far, but they are smart creatures and know not to approach the undead city. Castile muttered with some snark. I am assuming you are suggesting we are not as intelligent as direwolf for going into the city. Constantine shrugged and retorted with his own snark. I have never met a smart human before. Oof. We all eventually do something stupid, more often than we realize. Castile shook her head, smirking at the comment, but nodded in agreement. She looked back at the wolf, concern on her face. Do you think you and Flavius could hide and ambush it when it passed? I am certain there is only one. Constantine studied the direwolf, its red eyes seeming to glow from the distance. With 5 of us, maybe. Eric may be with Blaze and Flavius. Of course, it's fucking Eric. He named his choices for the ambush. I let out a low grunt from nearby, but was ignored. Why was I constantly being volunteered? Castile ended up shaking her head. No. Perhaps it is as you say, and you will leave us as we approach the Elven ruins. The afternoon wore on, and the road got wider as we passed over familiar stones. In one break of the trees, I could see the mammoth tree jutting out of the city ruins. Constantine said the elves maintained gardens of special trees. Scholar Fabian also noticed the tree. That must be a hearth tree, a ceremonial tree where the elves' dead were buried among the roots to be returned to the earth. The roots run deep, and they never stop growing. The First Legion supposedly cut all of them down within the Empire's borders. The lumber was used to construct the Emperor's palace in the capital. How? Maybe it asked, awed by the trees as well. I would think it would take 100 men to circle that gigantic tree. As he stepped from behind the tree, Constantine answered the question. Magic felled the trees, of course, Goliath. He looked up at the canopy, which was odd as it was the only tree that still had all green leaves while every other tree in the forest was turning fall colors and losing its leaves. Constantine had a sour look on his face because I had not spotted him sneaking up on me. He noted. Giant eagles were nesting in it the last time we passed. Adrian relayed to everyone in his command voice. Giant eagles are a danger and can lift a man 100 feet in the air and drop them to their death. He made eye contact with everyone. Do not wander in the open unless you want to test your ability to fly. We broke into the clearing around the city. Looking at it now, it felt like the forest respected the city's territory, and there was no overgrowth from the road toward the city. It had been 1,500 years, yet the 400 yards to the city were utterly unobstructed up to the walls. I was saying city too much. It has to be the city walls. Up to the walls. Constantine issued orders. We will stay under the cover of the trees as we circle to the western gate. As we moved under them, few leaves were left on the higher branches. The company made a slow pace as we skinned the skies and the woods. Scanned the skies and the woods. I was not the only one to see the direwolf off in the distant woods, still keeping track of us. I guess the haunted city did not scare it off. On our right, it was easy to see the city walls were crumbling. Large sections of the ramparts had collapsed. Some ancient foundations could be seen outside the city wall, with the wooden structure they once supported long since collapsed and rotted away. The overwhelming presence of death lingered in the air, with the vegetation refusing to grow and only the massive green tree jutting out of the city. When we reached the western gate, we found a large wooden gate the height of 2 men and wide enough for 6 horses to ride abreast through. Delmar questioned aloud. Why has the gate not rotted to dust? Scholar Fabian answered immediately. The elves treat their wood with a preservative that can last the lifetime of an elf. Elves can live more than a millennium. Blaze, who has incredible eyesight, said, It is not in good condition. It looks to have some rot, and there appears to be a gap in the middle on the right. He pointed, but I could not see anything inside the city. Castile studied the sky. We will make camp further away and enter the city in the morning, with an exploration group composed of the scholar, myself, and those of you that have runic weapons, except Delmar. Everyone else will guard the camp. I almost laughed when Brutus realized that claiming the runic sword prize came at a weighty price. I had obviously fallen into the trap as well. Although I suspected even if I did not have a runic weapon, I would have been volunteered. Yep. We moved 2 miles from the city and found a small, collapsed watchtower, similar to the one we stayed in by the river. There had once been a road that passed by this tower, but the forest had long since reclaimed it. Most of the walls had collapsed or were crumbling, but it would be easily defensible, and with the direwolf still watching us, the added security was welcome. While men moved large stones in the rubble to clear space for tents and make it more defensible, Constantine had Brutus and I practice against each other. I was finding the black blade's added length more suited my strength. Without using my air shields, Brutus and I were good training partners. Constantine and Adrian gave us pointers as they supervised the clearing of the tower's interior. I actually preferred weapon practice to moving the large stones with everyone else. Benito complained. I thought after a month of moving those cursed white marble markers, I would never have to move a stone again. Colm clapped him on the back. But you're so good at it. I bet you could roll that stone out by the entrance. Firth quickly doubted Benito's ability. I don't know. He's the smallest man in the company. They're just tricking him and he's stupid. Benito leaped at the opportunity. Of course he did. I bet you a large copper I could. I do not know if I should feel bad for Benito for getting tricked into doing the extra work. After all, he got a large copper out of it. Everyone was famished as the sun set, and a strong fire burned in the camp center. The walls around us were between 12 and 20 feet, so we felt safe. Dark clouds had moved in to cover the moon and stars, making it pitch black in the surrounding woods. We established a shit pit going into the old basement of the tower, as no one was going out into the woods tonight. I heard Blaze tell Delmar he could see the glowing eyes of the direwolf in the dark. I had a choice when I entered my dreamscape amulet later that night. I could start working on a new spell form, or practice with my new sword. I opted for sword practice, as I did not want to get distracted trying to learn a new spell form during our exploration. I kept my practice short to just 3 hours. When I exited the dreamscape, all was quiet, and the weather had gotten very cold. I pulled out my heavy rain cloak and wrapped myself to sit by the fire. I was not the only one. 3 men were guarding the archway into the tower, and 2 other men were at the fire. I sat with them, glad for the heat. I was not surprised. One of the men was Constantine, and the other was Delmar. They were talking quietly and just nodded at me as I sat across from them. The crackling of the wet wood made it impossible to hear what they were talking about. Castile came and sat next to me unexpectedly. Delmar asked her, "Is something wrong?" Castile looked to the sky. "The wolf is still out there, watching, and these clouds are not natural." Constantine shook his head irritably. "The summoner?" Castile nodded slowly. "I think so. Some type of store elemental is causing the change." Delmar cursed. "An ogre's ass, Castile. If it is Traeliorn, we should run now." Constantine stirred the coals calmly. "It is probably too late. Depending on what he summons to attack us, we might have to take refuge in the city." Castile offered some hope. "It might just be another of his apprentices. We will see how strong the elemental is when it changes the weather." As if she had cursed us, a few snowflakes started falling, quickly becoming larger and heavier snowflakes. The fire sizzled as larger and larger flakes were consumed on the coals. No one spoke until Constantine finally said dispassionately, "Seems like a powerful elemental to me." The camp was quickly awoken and everyone was ordered to pack. I was close enough to Castile, Adrian, and Delmar to overhear. Delmar wanted to retreat. "We should get back on the road and race back to Sobral," he added. "If we are going to run, we should also head east. Parvis is much closer than Sobral. Yeah, no way we're going to do that." The wet snow was accumulating quickly, pulling the heat from my body, and my toes were getting numb. My breath was a solid cloud every time I exhaled. I just hoped they would decide soon. My gear was packed, and I was ready. Adrian thought staying was wiser. If we march in the snow, at the rate it is falling, it could be a man's height in half a day. We should fortify the tower and prepare for the summoner. Castile finally decided. "We do not know how far the storm reaches. The direwolf knows we are in the tower. I think the storm elemental is creating the snow, so we do not move from here. Whatever beast he is planning to summon, it will know where to find us. He might be holding us here so he has time to summon a creature. We cannot deal with a wyvern," she said emphatically. Reluctantly, she decided on a course of action. We marched for Parvis. When Castile mentioned a wyvern, I thought Castile would give me a look, but she did not. Delmar called out, 3 days' food. Lighten your pack of non-essentials." Delmar was giving us the freedom to decide where we wanted to drop. The snow, already 3 inches deep after just 15 minutes, was soon littered with Legion gear and food. The falling snow quickly covered the tossed cooking sets, tarps, spare clothes, discarded food, and hatchets. Everyone was confused about the snow and marching before dawn. Glowstones were out, lighting our way through the deepening snow and limited visibility. Adrian moved among the men, letting them know what was happening so rumors would not spread. Visibility was only about 30 feet, and we marched 3 abreast and in a close formation. Then the front of the line suddenly stopped. Why? Everyone moved forward to circle a blue spectral form of a young elven child. It was thrashing at the snow, frustrated. Constantine already had his blade out and was flexing his forearm, eager to strike down the undead. He was scanning the snow further away, and you could see more figures moving. Castile had dropped her pack and removed the large bronze urn, the Kettle of Souls. Constantine looked down at her. They are wandering far from the walls. They must be killing the vegetation at night. We should be safe on the road. Castile stood with the urn. Destroy that spectre. Let's confirm this will work if we need it. Constantine eagerly stepped forward. The spectre looked just like a child, just translucent and looked innocent, holding a flower in its hands as it studied us. Well, into the fucking storage you go, Eric would have said. When Constantine attacked, its face was twisted in rage as it lunged at Constantine. His slash left a blue line on the spectre, pushing it back as his sword sparked. A second strike followed, and the apparition deformed and melted slowly into the ground. Child dead. Dead child dead again. Castile moved forward, holding out the urn. Her feet crunched on the snow, and her breath created large clouds in front of her. The urn had faint blue sparks flashing over it as she focused Ether into the device. Where the spectre had melted into the ground, wisps of blue-violet smoke flowed up into the urn. It was similar to the smoke from forming an essence, but had a deeper purple color. Castile breathed a sigh of relief as she capped the urn. Constantine asked, "What happens now that it is inside that?" She shook the urn, but he could not hear anything. She explained, "It is destroyed. Ether crystal dust with a necromantic affinity for alchemy. I had never used one before, and it felt like I was draining the heat from my hands." Adrian rushed forward to attack another spectre of an older woman who was more white than blue and had blended in the snowfall. "Runic weapons to the front. Do not fire any of the arrows unless you absolutely must." I drew my blade and formed the front line with Adrian to my left and Brutus to my right. Castile was drawing the second dead spectre into the urn. My first opponent was the image of a guardsman. He wielded a spectral blade, and my slash passed through the blade and connected with his body. I did not get the same sparks as Constantine's blade, but it felt like I had struck something akin to a training dummy. I stabbed with my next strike, pushing it back. My third attack was an overhead swing into its head, and it finally started to melt into the ground. Blue wisps of violet smoke from my defeated foe flowed back toward Castile. 9 specters were killed before they stopped coming. Damn. Adrian was breathing heavily and accounting for all 23 men and Castile. Delmar barked. "It is getting heavier, Castile." He was right, as the flakes were larger and our line of sight was dwindling. Constantine advised, "We will never make it if the snowfall is this heavy all the way to Parvis." Everyone's helm had an inch of snow on it. The snow also melted on our necks from our body heat, soaking our clothes under the armor. Hypothermia was going to be a real problem soon. Castile's hands were blue from the cold as she held the bronze urn. I produced leather gloves from my dimensional space and handed them to her. She took them absent-mindedly. She was considering entering the city, and we all knew it. Finally, the words came out with vitriol. "Cursed summoner, we make for the city's gate." Ooh. What's gonna try and kill them first? Since Trailiorn was like, they're not gonna make it into the city. I will make sure of that. So, seems like there will be a lot of action next time.